Namaskar, friends. I'm Simon.
I'm Ellie.
And if you enjoy our videos, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell thing. That would be very kind of you. And this morning we reacted to, finally, the trailer for KGF Chapter 2. But as preparation before watching the new trailer for the second part, we last night watched KGF Chapter 1, the first part. And we wanted to come to you with our full review of that movie because honestly, we really enjoyed it. So for those who don't know, KGF Chapter 1, and I think a lot of people do know, but it's a Kannada-speaking movie that's also available in a ton of languages, and it tells a story of a young boy called Rocky, who is born on the same day as the Kolar Gold Fields, KGF, are discovered. So Rocky's born on the same day that the Gold Fields are born, and he's born to a mother who is extremely poor. They grow up in poverty, and his mother sadly has cancer, and as she's dying, Rocky's mother says to him that most people know that money can be linked to happiness, but what most people don't realize, sadly, is that it can even be impossible to die with dignity if you're penniless. So her dying wish to Rocky is that whatever happens, she wants him to go on and become a wealthy man, and that sends him on an epic journey through mafias and mobs and into the Kolar Goldfield itself. Now, it would be impossible for us to tell you about that epic journey without dropping some spoilers, and especially we're going to talk at the end of this about the cliffhanger ending. So if you've not seen KGF Chapter 1 and you're worried about spoilers, then go watch the movie first and then come back and watch this.
So if we talk a little bit about the storyline, initially it starts off kind of like a fairly traditional gangster type movie. I have to admit, for me, it was a little bit to keep up with who everybody was and who the relationships were between people. The subtitles were really helpful with that, so you knew you could keep the names square. But I did struggle with how many characters we were following and the interactions between them. I found it a little bit difficult to follow, but that's something that I struggle with anyway. Even in books, I find it difficult if there's too many characters introduced at once. So initially it was fairly complex, kind of gangster type movie, and I thought that was what we were going to get going into it. And then we follow this guy Rocky as he starts to kind of go on this one-man mission to just take down every single, he's just like moving up the ranks by just taking out the next person above him. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is kind of, he's looking for power, maybe not exactly revenge, but he's just looking for power and just to get control and that wealth like he was talking about previously.
Yeah, and Rocky as a character starts off a little bit one-dimensional. He's a big, tough guy. He's stalking through Delhi, just throwing people through walls and fighting people, which is really cool, but it doesn't tell you a lot about his character. However, as the movie goes on, you learn these different aspects of Rocky. There's a romantic side. He gets kind of zany and a little bit silly at times, which is really off-putting, but then you see these really touching moments, and to the viewer those appear to be the real Rocky inside. You know, there's a mother who drops a bun, just like a bread roll, in the street, and he stops everything. He puts himself at specific personal danger to go and give this bun back to the mother and says the most touching things to her. And there's a moment in the Kolar Goldfields where a child and the child's mother are murdered, and you can just see from the look on Rocky's face just the depth of emotion and compassion that he feels. And particularly for me, there was just a tear-jerking scene where he rescues an old blind man. And, you know, you have no expectation that you think at that point it's not going to happen, it's too high risk, but it just speaks to who Rocky is as a person and this journey that he's on. And it's funny because, like most action stars, you see them develop fighting skills and they have all these montages where their combat skills improve. But like Rocky, even from when he's a child in this movie, is great at fighting. He's brave, he's got swagger. So fighting is not a challenge for him, but you can see just his compassion and emotion and empathy grow through this movie, which is really cool.
I think another line that I like that ran through the whole movie is just how mothers can feel undervalued. And I know that, I mean, for me personally, it's something that I didn't value in myself necessarily. I felt like, well, the whole thing is kind of, well, I'm just a mom. Like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm just a housewife. I'm just a mother. And it can feel like it's not that big of a deal. But I really liked that they kept coming back to well, mothers are the ones who teach you things, who raise you. I mean, it was his mother who made him the man he is, and that they kept coming back to that. And the scene with the infamous bun scene, when he said all those people were around staring, and she was kind of embarrassed, and he said, "Don't think about it. Like, you're stronger than anyone here. Like, with the amount she's gone through." And I really liked it, just the physical cost of carrying a child, like whether you're actually carrying a child like a baby, or pregnancy, the fact that it kind of showed how exhausting that can be to go through, that it's not a weakness, that's just an incredible amount for your body to go through. And I really felt seen in that. And not to kind of undervalue the role of fathers, but I feel like fathers get a lot of recognition for kind of showing up and being present and being involved, whereas mothers, it's kind of, well, it's assumed that that's what you do. And it's really nice to see that being called out, of saying this has value and you play such a huge part in making these people who they are as you raise them. So it was really nice to see that being highlighted and it be such a key element of the film, and a key part of his character is who raised him.
Yeah, mothers truly are the greatest warriors, as he says. There were two other really important themes, and Rocky's mother becomes like this mentor. As much as she dies early on, when he's a very young child, her words still ring in his head, and the lessons she teaches him. And there are two things. There was one that she says, if you feel strong because you have 1,000 people behind you, you may win one battle. But if you can make 1,000 people feel strong because you're leading them, then you can take over the world. And that kind of blows up at the end, and you just see Rocky inspiring the slaves that he's freed, these thousands of people who literally didn't think they were going to get out of the Kolar Gold Fields alive. And just to see that balance. The other thing that blew me away was there was a moment where somebody describes Rocky as a gangster, and the response is, you're a gangster if you've got a gang with you. That's the whole reason it's called a gangster, because you have a gang. If you're doing this alone, you're not a gangster, you're a monster. And I just love that sentiment, because Rocky, through the whole movie, he is this one-man army who is just fearlessly just walking into these crazy situations where people are like outnumbering him, they're outgunning him, and yet there's something about his swagger and his style that is just so intimidating to them that they don't even stand a chance. Like, they've mentally lost the moment they see him. And that's all about the brand that he builds through the movie as well. Like Rocky since 1951, this whole concept of a character that he creates to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies, and damn it, it really works. So let's talk about the visual style of the movie. It's very unique. Anything jump out at you about the visuals of this movie?
I think one of the things I found interesting, as we are kind of moving around through time, we kind of flash forward and flash back to illustrate different aspects of what you're currently, like the current point of the story. It will often flash forward or flash back to highlight things. But I really liked, there was such great attention to detail with things like the costumes that they were wearing, depending on the era of the story that we were looking at. The costumes would vary so much. I think one of my favorites were in like the 70s type era, like late 60s, early 70s, when you had those really sharp suits with the floral shirts with the really long collars. I really loved that. That was a really fun little tidbit.
Yeah, and the same with the cars, the buildings, the attention to detail in terms of history was awesome. I also really liked the difference in scenery as well. You had slums in cities, you had mansions and palaces, and then you had the Kolar Gold Fields, which is probably one of the more incredible sets I've seen in any movie. Like, the attention to detail of just making this bleak, kind of barren landscape, but also really intimidating. And it just gave a sense of despair that if you were locked in there, you were not getting out alive. And the acting of the slaves was incredible in there. They just were wailing and terrified, and the landscape and the scenery went along with that as well. And it's the kind of set that I haven't seen since movies like Mad Max, where really the set is so part of the scene that it has its own emotion as well. I thought that was incredible.
I think the Kolar Gold Fields set really stood out to me, and it's something that I want to look into to find out how they did it, because often with movie sets like that, they'll have a set for kind of close-up work, so they'll build a few walls, some rooms, maybe even some buildings, sometimes even a village, But to me, that looked more like maybe a slightly smaller set. I don't think they built very much of it. But then they will build to do like the wider shots when they pull out and you start to see an overview. They'll do maybe miniature models that replicate the sets that they've built. So you can pull out and see the whole like the whole kind of village area, but it's models. Or they'll use matte paintings, so they usually paint them on glass, and then they'll hold that in front of the camera, so you can see either the miniature or the set, and then the background will actually have been painted in afterwards. But the way it was so seamless with this, it takes an incredible amount of skill, and it's challenging having a job like that is so highly skilled to create that set and that scene. But your job is to not make that noticed. So if you do your job well, no one will know you've done it, which is such an incredible thing. And I really want to look into how they did it. Because like you say, when they pull out of the Kolar Gold Fields and you see the weight of that scene is you see how far it expands. I mean, it's like a city in the desert. And I really want to look into how they did that, because that was such a huge part of seeing just how broad an enterprise this was, just how many thousands of slaves it took to contribute to that and to be a part of that mining process.
Now let's talk about the music and the dancing as well, because there was some incredible music here. Now, you had some great songs, like Salam Rocky Bhai was probably my favorite song early in the movie, where you get to see Rocky becoming a boss. That was actually really, really cool. And what I liked as well is the song flows through a bunch of different scenes. It's not like the movie stops, you kind of have like a music video and then the movie carries on again. It really, the music was integrated into the movie. It was really, really clever the way they did that. And the same with the dancing. Like the dance scenes would there would be a bit of dancing, then something else would happen in the storyline, and then it would be back to the song and the dancing again. Really, really cool. But for me, more than anything else, there was like an orchestral, really emotional song that just kept coming and going throughout the movie. And if you've seen the infamous bun scene, that song was just heart-wrenching at that moment, but you see it come back again and again and again through the movie, and just that music, that theme, and it fitted the emotion in every scene that it was included so well that to me was just the highlight. So I'm not sure it's even fair to rate this movie, because it ends at such a cliffhanger. It really feels like half a movie, right? It doesn't feel like a movie in its own right. It feels like you're getting the first part, chapter 1. But if we had to rate KGF Chapter 1, what would you give it?
I would have to give it 6 out of 5.
6 out of 5 again.
There was just so much to it, and we watched it last night, but I keep thinking about it all through the day. There's just little things that I didn't think about at the time that I'm now thinking back to. And like you say, like the dance scenes, even there was so much symbolism in some of the choreography and just the costume style. I really like a movie that doesn't just kind of lay it all out, that you can really think on it, and there's so much there to kind of process.
Yeah. Well, as it's impossible to give 6 out of 5, I would agree. I would say 5 out of 5 is probably going to have to be our rating for KGF Chapter 1. But the big question is, how will it continue in KGF Chapter 2, which we just get in 2 weeks? So cannot wait to see what happens. We left it at just such an epic climax to the movie, where Garuda's been beheaded, Rocky's stood there with Garuda's men just charging in, all heavily armed, and then you've got Rocky's army of slaves who are now gaining the confidence of their new leader, and plus the government saying that he's the #1 criminal in India and raising an army to go fight him, and who knows. And then you've got Adira, who looks like a modern day Viking with a sword. I mean, Sanjay Dutt looks incredible. So, oh my goodness, KGF Chapter 2 looks like it's going to be a blast.
Really amazing. And check out our video from when we watched the KGF Chapter 2 trailer this morning to see what we thought about it.
Yes, you can see that up there. Well, that's all we've got for you for today. We hope you enjoyed our review of KGF Chapter 1. If you did, we'll be back very, very soon, friends, on the next Nerd Safari.
Peace out, nerds.